Hey everyone, it's Nina. Thanks for joining me today for another video. Today I'm going to be sharing 3 different projects with you that all feature a fun way to utilize pattern paper. In the Simon Says Stamp August 2024 card kit, there are some really great products, including some stunning sheets of pattern paper from Paper Rose. And I wanted to use these across each of the cards that I made today, and I wanted to use them in creative ways to be able to stretch just the basic use of pattern paper and give it a whole new life. So hopefully you'll be inspired by all of the ideas that I'm about to share with you today. So why don't we dive on in and start creating some of these fun cards. So to start off, I'm going to take some May Arts silk ribbon. Now, you're not going to get this whole roll in your kit, but I actually have this on hand. So I'm going to cut some extra pieces because I did want to color some off camera, so I have them for future projects. So I will use the 1 yard of ribbon that you're going to get in your kit, as well as some more lengths that I cut off of my roll. And I have that linked below in the video description if you want to get more of this ribbon, because it's great for using just on its own as white, or you can dye it with spray stains. And in this particular case, I'm actually using the distressed spritzes. You get 3 of those in the kit, and I'm coloring this one with peacock feathers. I don't do anything real crazy or technique-y with this. I just lay the ribbon down onto my work surface. I use a glass mat, which is kind of nice because you can roll it around in the ink before you finish it up. But that way you get to spread that ink across your ribbon, and then I just dry it with my heat tool. That's it. It's really simple and easy to do. It's not super messy, but yet you get a custom color of ribbon, which I think is really, really nice. So I'm going to use this peacock feathers one, but I did make some other ones with some of the other colors. You get peacock feathers, picked raspberry, and also fossilized amber in the kit for those distress spritzes. So here's one of the sheets of the pattern paper that's in the kit. I love this dramatic floral, and the back side of it was this purple stripe. I cut this sheet down so it was approximately 4 inches by about 5.5, and then I'm going to put about 1/2 inch of that pattern paper stripe down below it. This is going to ground that paper a little bit, and it also breaks things up, which adds a really nice touch of interest to the card. It's also going to be the place where I'm going to end up tying my ribbon around, where those 2 papers meet up. Now I did glue these 2 sheets together with some glue stick from Simon Says Stamp. It's one of my favorite adhesives for pattern paper. And you can see how this is going to get layered on top of my A7 card. So this 5x7 card is actually a pre-made card base from Simon Says Stamp. I love these. I use them all the time. You actually get one in your kit, which is really nice. I'm going to tie that dyed ribbon around the bottom of my card, right where those 2 papers meet up. And then I'll just trim off any excess with my scissors to clean everything up. I like cutting the ends of my ribbon at an angle. It looks really pretty. I'm putting some foam tape on the back side of this pattern paper so that way I can pop it up onto my card. This is going to give a little bit of dimension and adds that really nice shadow behind the paper, which is really cool. So I'm going to add a sentiment now. This is from the Graceful Flowers stamp set. And the sentiment, it says, thinking of you. I'm going to stamp it with embossing ink. There are coordinating dies that cut out the sentiment, which I'm going to be using today. You don't get those with your kit, but you can purchase those as an add-on. And I love being able to have the coordinating dies for stuff like this. The sentiments alone are one of my favorites, but then there's also a die that cuts out the beautiful florals that are in the stamp set too. So I'm embossing this sentiment onto black cardstock with white embossing powder. And then I'm going to use this brand new little mini die cut machine I got. This is the Spellbinders Scout. I love it. It's so small, and I have really enjoyed working with it because it's really stable. I have found from other mini die cut machines that I've used, there's always been something about it that I'm not 100% thrilled with, and I have been loving this one. So I used that to die cut my sentiment, and I'll use it again later to cut out my other one. But then this is where the sentiment is going to get placed right around the trio of flowers on my card. I did use the black foam squares you get in the kit to pop that up. And then I'm also going to glue a few of these beautiful gems from Simon Says Stamp. These are part of their Dazzling gem collection. This is a surf color, and I'm gluing those down with craft tacky glue. Now I did add one more finishing touch, and that was just a touch of sparkle on the petals of the flat white flowers. This is with an aqua shimmer brush from Nouveau, and I love that little touch of clear sparkle. It's very subtle. As you turn this in the light, you can kind of catch it there. It looks better in person because then you can really see it sparkle, but it's such a nice way to be able to add a little extra specialness to the paper. So here I used my paper to create that two-tone effect for the background, which looks amazing. And then I added that little extra touch of sparkle to enhance the look. So that was project number 1. Now let's move on to the second card. This one is, I think, my absolute favorite out of all 3 techniques. We're going to use the Blossom Swag embossing folder that you get in your kit. And I'm going to emboss this sheet of pattern paper from the card kit. Now I've cut this down to be about 4 by 5 1/4. And as you can see, I turned the embossing folder upside down and I'm lining the paper up into that corner right around that largest blossom. That's going to give me this really cool arc of florals surrounding that largest blossom. Now this looks really pretty as is, but I'm going to step it up. We're going to bring in some ink and I'm going to start first with black. And I know this is really contrasting when you first put this down and it kind of looks a little iffy how this is going to end up working, but trust me, it comes together beautifully. So I'm using intense black ink just because I really like how intensely black it is. And I'm using a blending brush to add that color down. And I've put it into the 2 corners opposite of each other. Then I'm bringing in Dusk, which is a Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated Ink color, and another blending brush, and I'm going to add that into the middle portions of those corners. So this way I'm bringing some of that dark color further into the paper, but I'm not trying to cover up that really large blossom. I want that to stand out. And that embossing that we added, we're going to make that stand out by putting some white pigment ink on top of it. So here I'm very gently dragging my white pigment ink over top of the raised surface of that embossing folder. Now if you get any ink where you don't want it, because I'm actually going to do that and I'm going to show you what I did to fix it. I accidentally got a little touch of that white ink in the corner there of the paper, but watch this. All you need to do is take your blending brush and just buff it out and you won't even know it's there. So I used the blue ink to just buff that out. But that white pigment ink really makes the embossing areas stand out, especially across that darker ink that we've added in the corners. So we've got that really great contrast, which is highlighting that beautiful large blossom in the corner. Now I also am enhancing this with some splatter from the Peacock Feathers Distress Spritz. And then I'm going to show you before and after. Look at this. This is that sheet of pattern paper on the left. And then this is what it turned out to be. And it's just magical. I love how this transformation has made this paper go completely different than what it was originally intended to look. So this is just a great example of how you can use your pattern papers and alter them with your inks and embossing folders and other types of mediums to create a whole new look. So I'm going to turn this into a card. I'm going to take one of the other sentiments from the Graceful Flowers stamp set. This one is a Sending Love and Hug sentiment. Again, I'm using embossing ink, and then I also used gold embossing powder for heat setting my greeting, which looks really pretty, and it's going to go nicely with the touch of gold that I'm going to add around the edges. So I did pop my sentiment up along the bottom of my card. I did use the dies to cut it out. And then here's where I brought in some metallic gold cardstock from Simon Says Stamp, and I'm going to layer this behind my panel. This is going to add that little extra touch of gold, which will tie in nicely with my sentiment. So it's a very thin border, and you could cut the middle section of that paper out if you want to save on the paper, but I'm just going to go ahead and use that full sheet, cut it down so it's slightly larger than my card panel. And then I'm going to adhere this onto the A2 black pre-scored note card that you get in the kit. These black card bases look so good with a contrasting card like this, where you've got a lot of really deep, rich colors, and we do have, of course, some touches of black in there, and that's really going to enhance the look of those darker corners. So I'm going to complete the card by adding a few gems. Again, I'm using that same Surf Dazzling gem collection from Simon Says Stamp. I'm using my Place and Pierce tool and some craft tacky glue to help me glue all of these down. These gems sparkle so beautifully, and so when this card catches the light, you get that really nice shimmer from the Distress Spritz and also the gems too, which I think is really pretty. So like I said, this one I think is my absolute favorite out of all 3 cards that I'm going to share today, but there's still one more, and this one I think is really fun, and if you like to color, this is a really great technique. So this sheet of pattern paper is spectacular. And I loved the pink tones that were in it. So I wanted to bring in a little bit more of that pink onto the paper. And I wanted to use the stamp set because there is a gorgeous floral spray in the Graceful Flowers stamp set. So I'm going to stamp with that flower stamp onto my pattern paper. And I'm using intense black ink for this. And I know it's a little hard to see, but you're going to see how this comes together. It's really, really cool. I stamped this in 2 corners of my paper, and that's going to give me something that's going to frame up that larger pink blossom on the left, and that's going to be the focal point of my card. You can see I've cut down the paper now, so it is about 4 by 5 1/4 approximately. And now with those black outlines, I'm going to use those as my guide for coloring in the florals. So I picked out some different colors of Copic markers that I thought matched really nicely with the colors in the paper. And I have all the colors linked below in the video description too for you to find. So that way if you're curious about any of the colors I used, you can find that there. But these colors, especially the pink, that's what I really wanted to bring into this paper. That's going to add that really nice touch of contrast that's pulling out that pink color in the center of my flower. So after coloring in my floral elements, I then brought in some of the Distress Spritz in Picked Raspberry and splattered that on the card. That'll add a nice touch of shimmer. And then I also used this A2 Nesting Frames die set from Simon Says Stamp, and I cut some champagne cardstock with it. So that way I can go ahead and frame up that pink blossom. And now that really creates a beautiful focal point on our card. Those pink flowers that we colored in, I love how they just add that nice touch of color around the edges. I'm making a card base from some soft navy cardstock from Simon Says Stamp. I'm scoring this with my Simon Says Stamp scoring tool and a Teflon bone folder. I always use a Teflon bone folder because it never adds any sort of sheen to the paper when you crease or burnish it. My card panel is going to get glued straight down onto that card. This card is not very bulky, so it is an easy to mail card. And now all we need is a greeting. So I'm going to pull out these birthday sentiment strips. This is actually the reverse pack. And I'm going to trim out this happy birthday sentiment with my mini trimmer, and I'm going to foil it. I love being able to foil these Simon Says Stamp sentiment strips because they are printed with toner ink, so they take toner foil beautifully. I'm putting this inside of a Gina K Designs carrier sheet, and I'm going to run that through with some gold foil. So that way I'll have a nice gold finish to the greeting, which will pair up nicely with that champagne frame that we added. So my sentiment just needs to get trimmed down a little bit so it fits my card better. I just use my scissors off camera to trim off the sides, and then with some foam tape I'm going to add that behind the greeting so I can pop it up along the bottom of the card down towards the bottom of the frame. And so that still lets that beautiful pink flower stand out perfectly as our focal point, but that extra touch of color around the edges with the leaves and the pink flowers really makes this pattern paper elevated. I'm going to show you, of course, the before and after so you can see how this paper transformed. Just finishing things up with a few gems, but here you go. You can see side by side how much this paper has changed by adding that stamping and coloring. So this is a really fun way to be able to enhance your pattern papers. All of these techniques are, and I think they're a lot of fun to replicate. You can definitely do these with other types of pattern papers, not just the ones I'm using today. But all of the products that I did use are part of Simon Says Stamp's August 2024 card kit, or you can purchase these products outside of the kit as well if you're watching this later on YouTube. So thank you so much for coming by and spending time with me today. I hope you were inspired. I really enjoyed making these cards and I was excited to share them. So I hope you enjoyed, and I appreciate you watching this video to the very end. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I will be back soon for more inspiration to share.